Now let's get more reaction to the end of Andy Murray's career as he bowed out in the quarterfinals of the Olympic doubles event.
Yeah, we can now cross live to tennis commentator Jonathan Overend, who joins us right now. Jonathan, thank you so much for coming on early this morning and chatting to us about this. It wasn't to be in the end for Andy Murray in Paris, but those comebacks, I suppose, in the previous round, I suppose summed up what we've seen so many times from Andy Murray as a competitor.
Oh, absolutely. Wondered which comebacks you were going to talk about there, Pete. So many to reflect on over the course of his career, because he has been such a fighter, of course, and just loving that occasion of being match point down. I mean, 7 of them over 2 rounds, and they almost did it again last night in the sense that they were being beaten heavily. They saved the match point, and then suddenly they were the back in the match, and you felt they couldn't do it again, could they? And of course, it did prove too steep a mountain to climb against 2 of the very best players in the world, in Taylor Fritz and Tommy Paul. But it allows us to reflect on simply one of the great British careers, both in terms of tennis and across all sports, I think, because what he has achieved and the history that he has made certainly puts him in the conversation for greatest British athlete of all time.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think it was the right tournament then for Murray to end his career?
I think what was really good about it was that it gave him moments of elation, moments that he didn't feel that he would ever appreciate again or experience again, because his career, with all the injuries he's had, the surgeries he's had, and some disappointing defeats as well, it's been kind of meandering towards a finish, and it's been on his mind about how he should bring the curtain down, because ideally you want, of course, to finish on a victory, maybe lifting a title or a medal and saying, there we go, drop the mic and off you go. But it's so rare for that to happen, particularly in a sport like tennis, where everybody loses apart from the guy who wins the tournament. So it was really hard, I think, to judge how that would go. He played the doubles at Wimbledon, and he's played the doubles here. And as I say, he's had those moments of elation over 2 victories at this tournament that I think will be among the memories he will reflect on when he looks back at his career. So I think that's why he was actually quite satisfied last night. And, we didn't see the rush of tears on the court that I felt might happen had it been, for example, a sort of drab first round defeat on an outside court somewhere. It felt right. It felt like the right time, and he got to leave on his terms.
Jonathan, I'm going to put you on the spot here. You mentioned he's in the conversation for the greatest British athlete of all time. Do you think he is?
I mean, I'd say yes. I'm biased coming at it from a tennis point of view. You can't say definitively, can you? But look, let's put it this way. If you were to mount an argument for Sir Andy Murray in terms of what he's achieved, the legacy he leaves, the messages that he's sent out throughout his career as well, just everything about him, the fight spirit, the will to win. If you were to mount that argument, it would take a very, very good one to beat it. And, I don't think there is a standout contender to beat Andy Murray, which is why I say, he's definitely in that conversation.
I mean, you commentated on a lot of Murray matches down the years. Are there any matches that stand out to you?
Yeah, just a few. I mean, it's a 20-year career. I mean, I remember 20 years ago this summer being at Flushing Meadows when he won the US Open Juniors. And that was really the moment that marked him out on the global stage as one to watch. The next summer, he comes to Wimbledon, wins a couple of rounds for the first time, loses in 5 sets to David Nalbandian. But again, we'd seen enough to know that this was going to be a very special player. Then, of course, he starts beating the top guys. He beats Federer, he beats Nadal, he beats Djokovic. He gets to world number 1 in 2016. And of course, before then, he won the Davis Cup for Great Britain. He won the US Open of 2012. He won 2 Olympic gold medals in total, and famously that first Wimbledon of 2013, which for me will always be the one, ending that 77-year wait, Fred Perry and all that, to win Wimbledon for the first time. And I always thought on that day, no matter what happens now in Andy Murray's career, nothing will beat that first time he won Wimbledon against Novak Djokovic in that brilliant final on that sweltering July day. So that will always be the one for me, the Wimbledon win of 2013.
I mean, it's difficult to say. Do you think he could have won more Grand Slams? I mean, he's in an era where there's been obviously arguably the 3 greatest tennis players we've ever seen. But do you think he'll look back and think he could have achieved even more?
Well, I think that's a really interesting one, because could he have won more? Absolutely, had he played in a weaker era. But that's where it gets really interesting. I remember asking Andy this very question some time ago now. Do you wish you'd played in a weaker era and won more majors? I don't know, got into double figures and joined the real greats in terms of the prizes he won. His answer categorically was no. Playing Federer, playing Nadal, playing Djokovic, competing against them made him a better player, he said. And for that, he would always be grateful.
How much of a legacy then, Jonathan, has Murray left in British tennis?
Well, it's a huge legacy. He's changed British tennis forever. He's inspired youngsters to pick up a racket for the first time. He's inspired older players, I guess, to stay in the game. Sometimes just as important. We've already heard that the Centre Court of Queen's Club in London will be called the Andy Murray Arena from now on. There's going to be a new tennis centre in Scotland built, surely in his name, about time. That should have been funded and approved and built many years ago. And why stop at one, by the way? And more than that, a wider point. He's speaking up for women in tennis and in sport. Will always be appreciated by his female peers, one of the very few male athletes to do so quite as publicly. And I think that will most definitely be part of his legacy, his advocacy for women in sport and his champion of equality.
Absolutely right, yeah. And just one final one, Jonathan, just to sort of put you on the spot again, and my apology, but in Murray's absence now going forward, who takes up the mantle of the figurehead, shall we say, of British tennis?
Well, from the men's side, Jack Draper is the obvious one, a boy who was in the stands for that Wimbledon final I mentioned in 2013. I think he was 11 at the time, Jack Draper. So to see him now closing in on the elite of the men's game is absolute evidence of how Andy Murray inspired that young kid to go on and have a professional career. So Draper is already winning titles. He's on the verge of the world's top 20. And if he goes on to have a fraction of the career Andy Murray had, I think he'll be very satisfied. So Draper's the obvious one. What we want to see, of course, is strength in numbers coming through. And that's where the physical premises, the tennis centres, are so important to give kids those indoor facilities to play when the weather's not so great like it is today here in Paris. You want to get inside, you want to have the facilities in order to play the game. And that's where I think his legacy will really be appreciated, particularly in Scotland. So kids in those remote regions don't have to do the sort of drives he had to do as a kid to play tournaments and even just to find people to play against. That in tennis is so important.
Jonathan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your valuable insight on Andy Murray.
Have a good day.